Still Life Week 4. For today's Still Life, we'll be doing introduction to the drapery and we'll also repeat two of the objects that we did in the earlier class. So I start my drawing by dividing my sheet into equal parts, both horizontally and vertically. And like we did for all the other drawing classes or the other Still Life classes, I'll begin with drawing, assuming one of the shape at first. So I'm assuming that as the pottery that I have in front of me will be placed right in center, and it will be of somewhat this height. So this is what I have assumed. You need to assume a similar any one object. Either you can start with apple, pottery, or even the drapery. Now after assuming that this was the total height of my pottery, I'll compare the total height of the pottery with the apple which is placed in front of me using a pencil. So when I compare that, I found that half of my pottery equals to half of my pottery equals to the height of the apple. So I know this much is the height of the apple, but I don't know exactly where it's placed. So when I run my pencil horizontally, it's placed just below the line of the apple. So somewhere, if this is the point of my pottery, this is the point of my apple, and the total height of the apple is half the pottery, and this is how I got where the bottom of the apple, the total height, the bottom of the pottery, the total height. Now when I'm done with the total height of both the pot and the apple, it's time to decide where my drapery will begin from and where will it end. So what I'm doing is I'm measuring the total height of the pottery and comparing it with the starting point and the ending point of the drapery. So I got it's like 2.5 times. So I'm measuring that and drawing it accordingly. So now I got the total height of the pottery, total height of the apple, and the total height of the drapery. It's time to measure how wide these objects are. So I'll begin with the pottery again. For that, I can work with two ways. Either I can measure the total height of the pottery and compare it with the total width, or I can measure the total width of the widest point of my drapery with the total height of the apple. So widest point, remember that portion from where it is widest, I'm measuring that and I'm comparing it with the total height of the apple. So it's a bit less than the total height of the apple. I got this is the measurement of how wide my pottery is. I'll divide the page into two half portions. We'll measure if they are exactly half, and then we'll mark both the ends. So this is a box, a rectangular shape that I got, in which I know that I have to place my pottery. My pottery will be touching the edge of this particular box. It won't come out, nor it will be like smaller than this box here. So similarly, the way I drew the box for the pottery, both the potteries together, I'll do the same with the apple. And I know that my apple I'll first mark the center of the apple. So I kept my pencil as if it is poking right in the center of the apple. So I know it's somewhere here. Now I'll measure the total width of the apple, compare it with the height, and it's a 3/4 of the total height of the apple. This is the 3/4, marking the center of the apple, dividing the 3/4 into 2 equal parts. The simplest way is just fold the paper into the paper scale so that you get the middle line. So here is my little middle line, and this is the one edge of the apple, the second edge, and I'll create a box out of it. After doing this, what I did was I stood back and observed my drawing, and I felt that both my objects were shifted a bit towards the left side. So it's time to move it a little towards the right, and I wanted just an inch towards the right. So what I'll do is, this is how I rectify my drawing. So I'll move everything an inch towards the right side. So I'm moving this and I'm cropping 1 inch from that side, drawing the lines. So this is my new box, and similarly I'll do the same for apple, move it 1 inch this side and then crop similar from the other side, and this is where my apple will sit. So you can see it's so easy to change the position of your object if your composition does not work. And I'll just remove the extra lines. So I have the box or the shape, the square shape, the rectangle shape for the pottery, and the rectangle shape for the apple. Now it's time to draw the drapery. So I know the topmost point of the drapery. The topmost point of the drapery, if compared with the pot, the total height of the drapery is 2.5 times the pot. This is the measurement that I see from the place where I'm standing. It's not necessary that the measurements will be the same for your drawing, because there are different photo references uploaded. So now that I have marked the top, I'm keeping my pencil at a angular position matching the how the drapery is falling, and will create that line onto my canvas surface. I'll do the same on the second side. On the other side, I'll keep my pencil at an angular position, my arm is straight, and then bring the same and draw the other side of the drapery. So similarly, the way we drew the 4 sides for the pottery and apple, I'll be drawing maybe more than 4 sides for my drapery, creating a shape that I know my drapery will fit into. So in the base, again keeping my pencil horizontal, I checked how the how the drapery is moving, so it's a bit slant, and similarly the other side. You can see all the measurements that I did. My arm was straight, and these are the sides in which I will fit my drawing. So we did the drawing earlier. I'm not doing that in detail, just showing you maybe just one apple. So this is the center. The line is coming out of the center, then it's moving a bit, and then it's touching the ground. I keep on checking the angles, and I can see it's turning more. Similarly, the other side of the composition, the apple is much wider, so the angle would be not very deep, and this is the widest point of the apple, and then it comes inside. So similarly, you need to draw your still life with all the details possible. The perfect, if you draw the still life perfect using the method that I have taught, and you put the values good values, your still life will look perfect. So as I'm marking the different angles, I keep on measuring my still life. I keep on checking all the measurements that I did earlier. So I'm just reconfirming that whatever I have drawn is correct or not, and I'll start with the pottery now. So there are two pots kept, one on top of the other. So from which point does the second pot starts? So I measured it. So it starts around 1.5 of the apples of the pottery. This is the base of the pottery and this is the measurement. So this is the 1 apple and half apple. So this is where the second pottery or the opening of the bigger pottery is there. And again, I have 2 rectangular shapes. I'll place one pottery in the below and the second one above. So this is the complete drawing. You can see how detailed my drawing was for everything. For opening of the mouth or the drapery, I have drawn squares, I have drawn shapes, and inside those shapes I have given details. For the drapery, you need not add all the folds, but you just need to add major folds in the you can see, if you compare the drawing, my drawing with the photo reference, I have only covered major shapes, and now I'm also drawing the shadow shapes, both the form shadow and the cast shadow. And because there are so many lines on my drawing, I usually write an S or CS where the cast shadow is, and FS where the form shadow is. So similarly, the way I marked the shadow shapes for the pottery and apple, I'm doing the same for the drapery. I'm moving my pencil as per the shape of the shadows I see. So this is the final, after the drawing is done, we'll start with filling in the charcoal. First we'll fill in all the shadow shapes, the cast shadow. Not judging the value, making it dark as possible, and holding my charcoal in a very natural way, like we hold a pen while writing also. I'm playing this particular part of the video a bit in fast forward motion because we did in last 3 videos we focused on how to fill the shadow shapes. So I'm not doing that in detail for this particular video. You can see how I'm marking the shapes, the movement of the shadow shapes. If it's falling on the drapery, it has different curves. I'm marking that also. Similarly, I did for apple and the pottery. I'll also do it for the drapery. there is form shadow, there is cast shadow inside the pottery, and of the pottery on the top falling on to the base pottery. So I marked that also. I'm marking the shadow shape of drapery, and all this is marked with squinted eyes. So I'm squinting my eyes at the photo reference, and I'm squinting my eyes on my drawing sheet so that I get the exact values. I'm not looking into any details at this point. I'm only concerned about the shape of cast shadow. I'm also marking in the form shadow. This time when I'm marking the form shadow, I'm keeping in mind values, how dark my form shadow is. Earlier in all videos we marked the form shadow with the darkest dark, but as we move towards more complicated studies, it's important that we decide both the shape of the form shadow and the total value of the form shadow when we are marking it onto the object. So here I go. I have marked the form shadows, and talking about the form shadow on the drapery, so you can simply take the charcoal and fill in, because they are really big form shadow shapes. Also marking in the shadow which is falling back in the background, and again using my finger I'm smudging the form shadow inside the objects, because the form shadow has a very soft edge in comparison to the cast shadow. I'm merging it, and if I feel that I have not added enough charcoal, I go ahead and do it once again. So like we did earlier, we'll start rendering using charcoal pencil slowly from the shadow side, the form shadow side towards the middle tone, and this time I'm working with really fine small strokes. The idea is to get a 3D form and move from darker side towards the lighter side, and keeping in mind that my pencil is sharp enough so that I get really fine lines. So you can see I'm working with my pencil slowly, judging the angle, judging how the plane is changing. So apple is coming from back, that's why my this particular side which I'm shading is coming from back. So that's why my strokes are a bit angular, and as I shade the front side of the apple, my strokes would be much more straight. And in case if I feel that certain darker shades are coming from below, I change the angle of my strokes, taking it from bottom towards the top side. And you can see very slowly Each stroke that I make is very thoughtful. I'm thinking, I'm looking at my reference, I'm judging how the different planes on the apple are moving. I'm slowly building the values from darker towards the middle and lighter areas. From this point, I'm not using charcoal, I'm just using charcoal pencil. I'll use charcoal only when I need to work in the shadow side or the firm shadow side. Else I'll complete my entire drawing using charcoal pencil. Now there are three planes that I see. The side which is going backwards, the front side and the top plane of the apple, because I'm standing, the still life is below my eye level. Similarly, I keep on working on the apple. You can see I'm observing every tiny detail. I'm observing how the movement of planes are. I'm not getting into details. I'm not thinking about different textures or lines that I see on the apple. I'm talking about planes. The front plane, the side plane and the top plane. There are different bumps like structure on the apple, or different raised structure on the apple. I'm just building those forms. I'm not getting into any details. If certain areas get really dense and dark, either you can use cashmere cloth, your finger or any soft cloth to merge in or soften the values. So once again, building the form, working with values, trying to match the values of the apple with the original image or the still life arranged in front of me with my drawing. So there are 5 objects. There is drapery, there is foreground and apple and 2 potteries. The darkest is the apple, the second one is the pottery, and then is the smaller pottery kept on the top. Then the value of the drapery behind and the foreground. Now you can see I started with dark, middle and slowly building the lighter values. As I'm working with the charcoal pencil, I'm also fixing the edge or the sides of the apple. If I see any drawing mistake, I fix it right there. If my drawing is perfect and if I put the values in the correct manner, my still life will look good. So my main aim is perfect drawing and perfect values. I'm also marking in the shadow, the highlight, preserving the light area. So after working for around 20 minutes on the apple, I shift towards the pot, and I'll come back to the apple later on and finish it more. So similarly, the way I did apple, I've blended the form shadow and I'm creating strokes using the pencil. The surface of pottery is not as smooth as was of the apple. That's why I'm using really bold strokes so that I can also show the texture on the pottery. I can also show that the pottery is not very smooth. So I'm working accordingly, and I won't be blending my pencil strokes on the pottery. And you can see I'm again coming from the shadow side, the form shadow, building the form and moving towards the lighter side. There are different bends that I see on the pottery, and I'm constructing those as well, slowly moving from darker towards the middle and creating the lighter side. The pressure that I apply on my pencil is consistent, like it is the same pressure for all the strokes. To get darker strokes, I have the places where I need darker values, I go for the quantity of strokes are more. The places where I need lighter values, the quantity of strokes are less. Similarly, like on apple, just below the highlight portion, there is a light portion, and I did not do a lot of work with pencil around that area. I preserved the lighter shades, and I just had few strokes to get not the highlight but lighter value. You can see how I'm moving my pencil, so it's coming angular from both the sides and getting straight in the center. This way I'm able to create dimension, and using charcoal when I'm fixing the darker edges, marking the very dark openings and shadow shapes that I missed earlier. So similarly, the way I did the bottom pot, and I'll do the upper one. At this point, none of my objects can be called completely finished. I work slowly. I work on one object for 10 to 20 minutes and then I shift to the second one. When you concentrate more on just one object for a long time, you tend to lose the values to drawing, and slowly it gets more confusing. So it's good to switch between objects, switch between areas in every 10 to 15 minutes. So after almost covering majority part of the pottery and the apple, now I'm moving towards my drapery. I have smoothened out the drapery using the back of my finger, both the shadow shapes and the form shadow, and I'll demonstrate a smaller portion to you on how to do the drapery. So again, I try to understand the texture of drapery. It's a very soft cloth and you need to show that softness. If the surface is soft, the shadow shapes, though it looks, it may appear hard, the shadow shapes may appear hard with hard edges, but actually they are quite soft. So when you closely observe the still life, the shadow shapes are soft, not completely hard. So here what I'm doing is I'm taking my charcoal pencil, getting it, moving it from the shadow side towards building the middle value. And here the local color of my drapery is not very dark, that's why I'm moving my pencil very lightly, slowly building the values, not going into dark values right away. So you can see all my strokes are coming from the shadow shape and going towards the lighter area. This entire still life will take a lot of patience. You need at least 4 to 5 hours of practice. The more concentrated you do, the better the result is. Take it slowly, do few components, but make them perfect. Don't try to do everything at a very fast speed, but stop in between, observe the still life, observe your drawing, take breaks, and then start working again. So once again, after taking break, I've started building values, building different strokes, and I'm comparing the values. So value of this particular fold is dark in comparison to the other values on the drapery. Thus I'm creating that the darker area and also building the lighter area so that I can put my highlights on. When I'm working at one fold, I'll try to complete it like around 60% before I work on the second one. For now, I feel my drapery is around 40%. I need more values, I need more form, and that I'm building slowly by adding strokes which are coming from the shadow sides and moving towards the middle tone. I squint at my picture, I squint at my reference, I squint at the live arrangement in front of me, and I come back to my drawing. I keep on checking my drawing, and here I feel that I need a bit more dark, a bit more strokes which seems like coming from the shadow shape. So I took my charcoal and I'm adding few darker values, and then because this is a charcoal, I removing the extra charcoal, and you can see slowly the form is building. And there is a beautiful crease on the drapery arranged. I like to add such details. It gives more drama to the entire composition, so I'm adding that as well. And it also supports the movement, the movement of the fold. So it's coming straight and then it's going inside. So you can see the line is coming straight and then it has bent at a particular angle. And there's a strong highlight as well. Certain shadow shapes are very dark on the drapery, and as it comes down it gets lighter, so I'm keeping that also in my mind. And before I add more values, I'll preserve my lighter area, the highlighted portion, using an eraser. I'm taking off the extra charcoal, and then again we'll smoothen it out using my finger. Now I feel that some of the shadow shapes need to be a bit more dark. So again, taking my charcoal, darkening the form shadows, all the bends and curves, and then building the value. So I'll keep on repeating the same process. Still my painting, my drawing is around 80% complete. The more I work, the more I build the values, the more 3D look it will give. So I'm continuing the process, and I work on the still life. So you need to do a similar still life. The photo references are attached to the assignment section. You can use those photo reference, and if you want to arrange your own still life, you can do that as well. If possible, take photographs in between once you complete your drawing, once you complete your form shadow and cast shadow, and then in the end. So it will help you to assess yourself on the basis of what your drawing process is, how well you are following, are you marking the shadow shapes correct, and then slowly building the form. Following the process is extremely important to get the result you are looking for.